Good evening, City Council. This is Anthony Miller, Special Districts Manager, presenting resolution for AD 2000-1 Improvement Fund Account Closeout and Budget Appropriation. Recommendation that the City Council approve and authorize 1. A budget appropriation in the amount of $16,500 within Special Districts Account Fund 500, Subfund 50503801 for the cost of administering the Improvement Fund closeout and completing a final arbitrage rebate yield calculation, and 2. Adopt a resolution declaring a surplus, ordering disposition of the surplus within Improvement Fund of Assessment District 2000-1, Oxnard Boulevard Highway 101 interchange, to call bonds ahead of schedule, and approving the closeout report. Background. AD 2000-1, Oxnard Boulevard Highway 101 interchange is an integrated financing district, referred to as an assessment district, formed under the California Streets and Highways Code Municipal Improvement Act of 1913 by the Oxnard City Council on December 19, 2000. The bonds were issued on August 14, 2003 under the Improvement Bond Act of 1915. The district was formed for the purpose of financing the construction of the interchange improvements, including an 8-lane overcrossing to connect Oxnard Boulevard over U.S. Highway 101, northbound and southbound on and off ramps for U.S. Highway 101, widening of U.S. Highway 101, traffic signals, landscaping and irrigation, decorative lightings, railings, sidewalks, curbs and gutters, pedestrian and bicycle paths, and other appurtenant work. This project was funded with the issuance of a limited obligation improvement bond in the total amount of $2,335,000. This included specific funds deposited for the purpose of constructing these improvements in an improvement fund account with an original amount of $2,106,242.50. Construction of this interchange was completed in 2015. After completion, there was a remaining amount of $182,375.06 in the improvement fund account that was authorized to be distributed in a manner consistent with the bond indenture and California Streets and Highways Code, Section 10427. Discussion. After the completion of major infrastructure projects that were funded through bond proceeds, it is not uncommon for some unspent funding to remain within the improvement fund accounts. Typically, these fund accounts are closed out shortly after the completion of the project, so that they do not present the possibility of incurring arbitrage. Arbitrage is the act of making a profit by purchasing something at a lower price and selling it at a higher price. Therefore, arbitrage rules exist to prevent municipalities from issuing bonds for the sole purpose of profit and investment opportunities. The closeout of this fund can be performed in multiple ways. However, the recommended action of the city's Finance and Governance Committee meeting that was held on December 10, 2024, is to proceed with option number 2, to call the bonds to reduce the principal and interest and provide an annual levy credit. This staff report includes the information that was presented to the Finance and Governance Committee for full consideration by the City Council. However, the attached report, as prepared by NBS, only includes the information relevant to the Finance and Governance Committee recommended action. All figures presented in the NBS report are estimated, as they are based on necessary assumptions to generate the expected bond payoff amount and schedule. The following table of pros and cons details each option as presented to the Finance and Governance Committee. Option 1. Credit the assessment levy for fiscal year 25-26. Pro. Fiscal year 25-26 assessment levy would be reduced by approximately 93.5%. Property owners in the district would only be responsible for their share of approximately $13,000 for fiscal year 25-26. It would allow for the earliest property owner savings and can fully commit all remaining funds. Cons. Fiscal year 25-26 assessment levy would be substantially lower for only 1 year, potentially misleading property owners into believing future levy amounts will be the same. This would not result in long-term principal and interest savings, and would only provide a fiscal benefit to property owners in fiscal year 25-26. Option 2. Call bonds to reduce the principal and interest and provide an annual levy credit. Staff and Finance and Governance Committee recommended. Pros. Would reduce annual assessments with a levy credit each year for the remaining life of the bonds. Total savings to property owners estimated at approximately $238,213 for the remaining life of the bond. Can fully commit all remaining funds, and would provide a benefit to the greatest possible number of property owners, as savings would be realized every year until the bond is paid. Cons. This would not result in the highest long-term principal and interest savings. Option 3. Call bonds to reduce the principal and interest levy in excess and perform annual bond calls. Pro. Would provide the greatest financial relief only if property owners own the property the entire time after the bond call until the bond is fully repaid. Would reduce the overall remaining life of the bond by 1 to 2 years. Total savings to property owners estimated at approximately $340,343.62, and can fully commit all remaining funds. Cons. The annual assessment amounts would remain the same. Savings would only be realized by property owners who own at the time of the final bond payment. Total savings would not be realized for 7 to 8 years. This could also incur additional administrative expenses to perform annual bond calls. After discussion, the Finance and Governance Committee recommended only selecting option 2. However, City Council has the authority to use multiple combinations of the 3 options for the disposition of the funds, but the impacts of its choices would be minimal while requiring additional time and resources of staff and consultants to formulate. 2 example options have been provided to inform the City Council of what can be recommended and how it may affect the district's property owners. Example 1. Application of a 50% Improvement Fund surplus levy credit and a 50% surplus March 2025 bond call with no excess collections. This option would include no excess collections in future years, resulting in an annual levy credit in the amount of the difference between the principal and interest to be billed from the original lien schedule and the principal and interest due based on savings from the March 2025 bond call. The levy in fiscal year 25-26 would be reduced to approximately 37% of the original principal and interest scheduled due to the levy credit and debt variance. Subsequent years would result in a levy reduced to an average of 90% of the annual principal and interest due from the original lien schedule. Total savings through fiscal year 2032 and 33 would be approximately $212,413. All property owners between fiscal year 2025 and 26 and the bond maturity would see some savings on their annual property tax bill. However, total savings would be less than if the entire amount was applied to the bond principal, option 2 above. Application of a 50% Improvement Fund surplus levy credit and a 50% surplus March 2025 bond call with excess collections. This option would include excess collections in future years, allowing for additional annual bond calls and maximum savings over the life of the assessment. The accumulated overpayments would be used to call bonds ahead of schedule, resulting in an early retirement of the debt. Property owner savings would be realized in fiscal year 2025-26 and in fiscal year 2031-32, but levies between those times would remain the same as in previous years. The levy in fiscal year 2025-26 would be reduced to approximately 47% of the original principal and interest scheduled due to the one-time 50% surplus levy credit. Subsequent years would result in levies at 100% of the original scheduled principal and interest, except that the final year of assessment billing would occur in 2031, providing a final levy of approximately 63% of the originally scheduled lien amount and 100% savings of the final scheduled lien amount due in 2032. Total savings through fiscal year 2032-33 would be approximately $324,194. However, total savings would be less than if the entire amount was applied to the bond principal and if excess levies were applied, option 3 above. Due to the complexity of these combination options and their limited impact on overall savings in exchange for a limited single-year levy credit, staff did not recommend either of these to the Finance and Governance Committee over option 2 as listed in the recommendation. Finally, this process is generally triggered after a notice of completion is issued at the end of the project. However, in this case, Caltrans was the lead agency responsible for the construction of the project. Caltrans completed the project in 2013 and via relinquishment agreement number 074870 transferred portions of the improvement to the city. The relinquishment agreement does not mention the improvements funded by the bonds as specifically completed by Caltrans. However, it is inferred that the improvements were complete at the time the city acquired the facilities in 2013, which is why the city did not file a standard notice of completion. Financial impact. The estimated surplus in the improvement fund as of December 15th, 2024 is projected to be $182,375.06 after costs associated with the closeout have been paid and interest earnings accounted for. The financial impact of this closeout is dependent upon the action of the City Council and will be consistent with the results as detailed in the attached report. Impacts based on the Finance and Governance Committee recommendation in Assessment District Fund 500, Sum Fund 50503801 are described in the table below. Questions?